Sanding. Right. Paint. It's I face this job of getting the paint off this boat with trepidation indeed. It's a very significant task, and a grubby task, and an uncomfortable task, and we're going to be using chemicals and power tools, and it's I don't know how long it will take. But here we are starting, and the first thing I want to do is remove these deck fittings and the like. I'm working single-handed today, at least for now, and these are bolted through underneath. There's screws above, and they've got flat head, flat head screws, but they're bolted underneath. So without disturbing these are congealed and corroded in, so these are held to a certain extent above the deck. So what I want to just do is, without disturbing them from above the deck, so whilst they're still jammed in, is to go below, lubricate the bolts on the bottom of these screws, and try and undo them from beneath, such as I can do them single-handed, because otherwise I'll need somebody up here with a screwdriver, and I don't really, I don't want to be waiting for someone with a screwdriver to come and help me. So let's give this a go. Right, so the important point, we're going to use WD-40. The important point in using this lubricant is when we come to be using adhesives on these surfaces inside, and if we're putting new fiberglass on here, we need these surfaces to be free from contamination from this lubricant, because that will stop anything sticking to anything else. So whilst we're using the WD-40, we want to get it onto the nuts that we've looked at from above. We want to get it onto the nuts. We do not want to get it all over everything, so we have to be very careful really with the WD-40, and just use some cloth to mask the area while we have a little spray around, and just little short bursts just to get a little bit of lubricant on there, and that will penetrate. There we are, have the can the right way up. And there we are. And then just take off the little drips from the bottom. And we'll leave that now, and then come back and have a go at those, undoing them after it's had a chance to penetrate for a few minutes, and we'll give it a go. So here we are sometime later. I've got the proper socket on a wrenching handle, and I'm just going to see where we get to with undoing these bolts. It's going to go very, very gently. I think that is just turning the screw. That is not undoing, it needs holding from the top, I think. Yeah, that is not going to come away. I'll try another. Yeah, it's just turning. It's not coming undone. So, whilst I've tried to get these off, I'm going to need a hand. I'm going to need a friend. If I didn't have a friend, I could just cut them off, but yeah. Phone a friend. And isn't it mostly like old women bending over?
Well, there are lots of women there as well, yeah.
Is that why you go there? Is that why you go there?
No, not so perfect.
My friend Imre has arrived.
Level.
Here he is.
Oh.
Imre,
Very
wave.
bright. Hello.
Imre has come to help me with holding a screwdriver to the tops of the fixings so we can get the screws undone. So, give it a go. Just got one tiny bit of... Do you want to try and grab it with pliers? If I push it up.
Okay.
These are the tools I bought to do the van with. It's quite cute using them for this. Done! Well, that didn't take too long. We've got all the inaccessible fixings undone. So now we should go have a cup of tea or something. Oh, there he is, lonely soldier. Top man, Imre, top man. It's a calm building site I like to have. So here we are, in the sunshine, the end of the summer, with some beautiful music getting on. Now I've done some experimentation and I think what I'm going to do is paint strip. You'll see I've tried the random orbital sander which keys the paint very well but doesn't take a lot off, so I've been here a very long time doing that. And I've tried a grinder and that takes it right back, but it makes a lot of dust into the air. There's no dust collection on it. But we can see we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 layers of paint. And I think the boat is grey. So what I'm going to do now is just take off all the deck fittings and put some paint stripper on tonight. And see where we get to with that. Okay. Well, that's a super busy day. Maybe you can't see, it's quite dark. She's now covered in paint stripper. So I did take most of the deck fittings off, but most of the day I've actually just been sanding, scraping back what was green, sanding the anti-foul areas, getting slightly splashed in paint stripper, which is now burning my leg and has burnt my face a little bit. I have had goggles on and I've had my sleeves taped, so that's alright. It's just where I've got a couple of splashes on my thigh and my shin. That'll be alright. So it definitely works because I can feel it working on my skin. We have to leave this overnight now. It's a caustic stripping solution, so strip it max, that's what it is. So we shall see tomorrow if it works. Hopefully it does. Don't know. It's not like nitrobols used to be. It's just caustic. It's not a super paint stripper. We'll give it a go. We've given it a go. It's now dark and I'm going to go and stop my leg from burning. Yeah, I want to do that. I want to do that. Well, in case you wondered what I look like in the morning, it's this. It's not the morning, it's the afternoon. So if you wondered what paint stripper looks like, when you leave it on too long and it dries to a crust, which we do not want, it looks like this. like a crystal. So I'm going to wet this now, and hopefully it'll go back to being a jelly and we can scrape it off. Hope so. But not as planned. I'll give it a go. I don't want to take long because I need to get on. But we're now the third day into a paint stripping process. I'm not exactly sure how well it's going. It's certainly, let's go and have a look. So in the heat, the stuff dries to dry, but if you water it with a hose, it kind of stays on, but becomes then like this sort of gloopy gel again, and the paint, as you can see, is starting to go to nothing slightly. After 24 hours, I had a scrape, and we were only getting through to just the second layer of paint, so it really wasn't doing terribly much. So I've left it on for another couple of days and kept it wet, and I'm about to take it off. But the hazards of these materials, particularly this underneath, anti-fouling, the red paint, anti-fouling works by being a poison to things that try grow on it, and I underestimated, honestly, the strength of the poison, of the effect. Because I wasn't sanding it off, I was removing the top layer of what used to be green, and I got dust on my skin, and it really burned. It's like I'd been sunburnt. So and that's part of the reason for using a paint stripper, is to try and get it off and dispose of it without making a great toxic dust everywhere and all over, the people walking past on the pavement. But the paint stripper is a caustic solution, and although I had a pair of full splash goggles on, in fact working underneath the boat was so hot is they become steamed up, so I had to use my forearms to move the mask, and the mask itself became contaminated with paint stripper, caustic paint stripper, and you can see it's actually the line of the mask on my face there has actually burned the skin, and it's now scabbed over. I've just been to try and get what is really required for this job, that is a full mask, a full visor. Right, here we are. I've now scraped all of Arwen around. And I'm going to give this a go, which is on a pressure washer, sand blasting. I really don't know if it would work. It's not a very good pressure washer, but we'll just have a look, as it's here and it's still not completely dark, the amount of material that I've collected from the bottom of the boat, from the paint stripper, and this bucket. So about an equivalent I've collected with a dustpan, to stop it going on the ground and contaminating the environment. I think it's done pretty well. Maybe 80% is in that bucket that's come off the boat. So I'll give the sandblasting a go. Nearly dark, but got to get it done. Right, update on sandblasting. Sand comes through. It does definitely work. You can see the sand going up the tube. 30%. When you stop, the sand clogs the nozzle, and really the power of this machine is not enough to shift any considerable extra quantity of paint. It's really just not worth it. I'm going to use some snow foam, detergent that I use in my car, to just break the last of the stickiness of
paint stripper and then give it a blast off, and I need to find my head torch because it's the night time now. Snow foam. I mean, it's to get underneath, you've got like 2 inches above your nose. It's quite a job to scrape the bottom of a boat. I started at about 4 o'clock, I think, and it's just gone at 8, and I've all packed up. So one of the advantages of having a small boat is that you can scrape the whole bottom in 4 hours and jet wash the whole boat, and yeah, so it didn't take too long. It's not a pleasant job. It's really not a pleasant job at all. I might reflect to do it differently after everything. But just to finish, actually, because tomorrow is a very new day indeed, is some words from Roger Taylor in Ming Ming. Ming Ming 2 now. And he describes the scraping of the bottom of the boat as a rite of passage. And I do feel very differently about Arwen now, where she was a boat in my possession. I feel much more now like she is mine, and we are, we are together in this endeavour. Paint. Still paint. Filthy, dusty, horrible, with chemicals and skin burns and filth, and so it goes on. So we've established some things. I have put paint stripper on the boat and dealt with that. I have tried sand blasting. I have tried a heat gun, and I've tried sanding. So I know really where I am with the paint. I know that the toxic it's anti-fouling. It's red paint. Stops creatures and things growing on it. And it's very toxic. I've burnt my skin with it already. But I've taken it off basically with paint stripper. And it just came off in sort of sheets, actually with a scraper. We've just got this residue left now. I've tried sanding it, and it's really quite a thin layer, quite soft paint through then to the, this blue is the underlayer, this is the gel coat colour. One can sand through the gel coat to the fiberglass beneath, which I'd rather not do actually, but it's such a thin gel coat as it just goes through really so easily with the sandpapers you can't help to do it. So I know what I'm doing with that. Not much work involved in getting this part of the boat ready for painting when it comes to it. I've also sanded the main hull. You can see again down to the gel coat. Some remnants of the paint, just in patches, and then through to the fiberglass beneath. But here, I identified on the inside we had some crazing here, where some sort of flexing was going on, it was breaking the paint. But I can see from inside that there was a repair, and you can see that a repair has been done here. And it goes right through the hull. Repairs shouldn't really be done in squares. This should be a nice circle, or at least curved, because these corners are making stress points, because this repair will not flex in the same way as the rest of the hull. You can see where there's a stress line here. You can still see them. They don't seem to be structural cracks, but they are cracking. And they're kind of, whatever is going on here, I think this is probably best to be done again. I'm not sure how it has been done, and if I'm to believe in it, I'd like to do it myself, so that I know how it has been done. Hole in the boat. So, but I know where I am with the hull. The paint stripper didn't do terribly much, actually. The sandblasting certainly didn't do anything. I think the only option is just to sand this. The heat gun doesn't really touch it, so it's going to need to be sanded, and down to here, if the whole hull is going to be repainted completely with some advanced technical paint. If it is going to be painted with something which is not quite so advanced, and we can just make this existing paint smooth, but if we put some advanced paint on here, then the chemical action would remove this paint underneath. The new paint wouldn't stick properly, so we've got to remove all of that old paint. And I've also looked at the decks, which excellent. My dear friend James, who's a painter, came the other day. James is a paint expert. He's a paint professional. What's the name of your business, James? What's the name of your business?
Carter Kent Interiors.
Carter Kent Interiors. They are a recommendation for you. We're just having a little assessment of what the condition of the paint is on the boat. We had a look, and we tried sanding, and we tried the angle grinder. But actually we could smell, as we were using the abrasives, we could smell the heat causing chemicals in the coatings that we've got on the deck. We could just smell it. It smelt like car body filler or some sort of a chemical. And James was commenting that, you know, the heat of the sanding was lifting off the paint and making it difficult to sand. Well, of course, we actually have a heat gun here, so we tried a heat gun. You can see the thickness, as we've looked at before. The thickness of these coatings, very, very thick indeed. But in fact, they come off really rather easily with a heat gun. So I'm very, very happy with that.
First, we are entering a work site, and I've been insufficiently prepared up until about the last week for the protection of myself whilst working properly. Like properly. I did it in a half enthusiastic fashion. But here's what I'm using now. So, foamy earbuds. You roll them sideways and stick them in. The dust that I'm sanding is quite an itchy dust, or can be, from the anti-fouling. I used a insufficiently good coverall, and we'll see that from like the local building merchants, and it was not good enough. I'm using 3M products now, and this is the shirt that I've been using, but it's still a little itchy around the collar. So I probably won't be able to use this again, so I'm just using this for work only. I'm doing the washing of anything that's been used for sanding the boat separately from my normal clothes, because it's glass fibre, and the products also attached to it are itchy. It's a problem to introduce that itch into your clothes, because then everything starts itching. That red t-shirt is just not wearable. Hair,
God, it's almost long enough to tie back, darling. You could almost tie it back. Again, just covering everything that I don't want to get infused with dust. Right. Well, it would be an overall, but it's a flying suit actually. I haven't worn it for flying for a while. But if I just wear this all through the project, it'll give me an opportunity just to have something that I don't have to worry about and keep changing clothes, doing loads of washing all the time. But you can see that I'm wearing a cover all over the top of this, and actually it's completely clean still, so good going 3M for making actually a very, very good suit. Yeah, so this is like my Guantanamo Bay suit. It covers everything. At the end of each day I just brush it off, leave it outside. It keeps me really clean underneath, it's great, it's really good. These are my hard boots for going on construction sites. And there is stuff to stub your toe. It's when you're walking across the ground and you catch the front of your foot against something you haven't noticed on the ground, rough ground levels. It's really worth having steel toe caps. And workwear is actually very cheap. So this pair of leather boots with steel toe caps, I think, are about £35, maybe less than that. And actually, these ones, I saw them on a chap when I was on a site visit to London. I think they're all right. All right, they can look rubbish. Steel toe cap boots, and I'm quite a. I don't know if you've noticed that. I enjoy my appearance. Right. Three things. Number one, the dust mask. I'd used a really not a terribly good one. This is another 3M product. We know 3M from making magic tape and post-it notes. And it's an absolute minefield looking for protective equipment online, and even your building merchant is to know anything about the quality of a brand that you've never heard of. Well, I've heard of almost nobody at all in terms of PPE, protective equipment. But this is it's non-replaceable, but it's some sort of, that's a glass fibre, I think. It withstands a brushing off at the end of the day. Is quite comfy on the face, and looks absolutely awesome. Oh.
also up to face mask. I'm saying gloves. Woven backs, so if you knock your hand against something, it's not too hard, and then grippy, rubberized gloves. Very, very, very cheap. I think it was less than £1 a pair. Now this face mask, if you have it really clamped onto your face, it does fog up. So one has to sort of slightly perch it a little bit off for most of the time. If it's really, really dusty, push it back for a second, but that covers my whole face. So anything falling anywhere on me when I'm working above my head protects me, and I can still breathe from underneath. So there you are. Proper job. I try and look comfortable. Welcome to the cave. I'm very glad that we've got another, couple of inches of wood, just to give us a little bit more room under here, actually, because it is tight. I have done caving before, and it's of that order of just kind of, this is just very close to my face. That's all it is, it's just very close to my face, so it's uncomfortable in that regard. There's enough room to handle tools down here, it's not that much of an issue. It's not that much of an issue at all. I don't know which way is up. This is probably right. This is the last opportunity that I have to talk to you about the paint underneath. Because I'm about to remove the rest of all of it, right? So, and now I'm at the end of the job. I've established what I'm doing with it. So let's look up. So we have this is the residue of the anti-fouling paint. It's really rather thin here actually, and you can see from the film that using dust extraction into a protective bag on the sander means that there's not a lot of dust gets off the surface, and although in paint manuals, you're not supposed to dry sand anti-fouling, what I've done is I've removed almost all of it with paint stripper, just leaving this residue, and this sands off and gets sucked up relatively easily, and it's fine. So, using the big sander, some Makita half sheet with dust extraction, I think about £85, I've taken off then the anti-fouling, and this has left this light blue that we can see, but then it's also light blue, and then also this darker blue in patches, and this is laying in the surface of the underneath of the boat. It's not quite flat, so these are high spots where the sandpaper has taken off the darker paint, but sitting in the lower spots is still this darker paint. So what I actually do is to employ a different type of sander, which is a battery powered random orbital sander with dust extraction, then to get into because it's got a rounded edge, it gets in
to the low spots a little bit better, and is a better it leaves a better finish. That is because this is round. And this is round and small. This fits to the shape of the boat better than the much bigger, flatter sander, which tend to make, it's got quite a small contact patch and tends to make spot holes through it, flat spots. You don't want flat spots. So, taking off the anti-fouling residue with a big sander and then using a small detailed sander, random orbital sander, to then fair the surface to make it smooth. And you can see that all of the rest of the boat has already been done. So we have the residue of anti-fouling removed with a big sander to the, you can see, speckledy undercoating, and then with a smaller sander then faired to the surface ready to prime. There you are. So that's the totality of the job, and I think it will have taken, just to sand, I think it's going to total about 10 hours perhaps. I'll look it up. I'm keeping a record of all the time that I'm spending. There you are. Let me finish. Well, what I want to do is I just finish this last side of the sanding. It's the last bit of paint to come off the hull. It's been some weeks. Just before I do that, I just want to have a look at this, my pond yacht from when I was 8 or 9 or young. It bought from Monk Bar Model Shop in York, and I deliberated for at least a couple of days, maybe 3 days, deliberating the colour of the pond yacht that I wanted. They had all manner of colours. These were made in England at the time. We're sort of talking end of the 80s. And they had a whole wall of these yachts, all different colours. I chose this sort of light blue, marked out with a darker blue. And as we're sanding Arwen, you can see we get down to this colour. So these are the top layers of paint. And as we sand in, this is the last colour. So this is the first colour. So when Arwen left the factory, she was this light blue colour. That's the colour she was. That's her colour. Funny, eh? Hello. It is now. It's now next year already. So 22nd of December. So we just had the solstice, which I stayed up to see the sunrise for. A bit jaded from that, but we're getting there, really getting there now. So having sanded the hull, I'm now tackling this deck paint, which I think, yeah, chips off quite easily to a certain degree. Using heat gun on it. I'll just have a look This is how to take a window out. This is how they are. So we have a rubber strip, and this has an insert into it, and the window sits between the panels, and to get them out you have to remove the insert. Pop it out, pull it around like opening a tin, like corned beef or something. Right, that's that. And then the window should be quite easy to push in. And that's it. So, you know, they're quite strong. I can't push that in with the seal insert in. They're very, very weak when the seal insert is not in. I'll just have a look at the surrounds, because it looks the same on this side really as it does on the other side. I think where this hole in the boat is so enormous that as the boat flexes, as we talked about it doing, you can see stress cracks around the tops of the window, and then vertical cracking at the bottom of the window, and it's just the way it is. If I look on the other side, I can't see the other side. I'll just put a sheet over it. But that's my thought on these things: is the actual openings are, you know, that's basically cracked all through here. It's not super strong at all, but no matter. The windows won't go back in. But now, right, I'm going to go and tackle the deck again. It's not that late in the day, it's about 5 o'clock, but it is dark because it's so late in the year. Nearly the end of paint, nearly. It's very cold. It's Christmas Eve, and in the spirit of getting things done for Christmas, I'm going to try and get the last of this paint off. So let's have a look. We're on the deck now. And I've got a lot of it off already. You can see the white is the gel coat. That's the natural finish of the glass fibre. And then we've got this paint that we've looked at before. On top of it, this dirty paint. So look on the other side. This side is nearly done. You can see the paint is very, very thick. And you can see, so here, this is a smooth, this is the smooth original finish of the boat. It's a bit lumpy actually, to be perfectly honest. The quality of the finish on the top side is not so good as it is on the hull, and neither is terribly flat. But that we can see the original surface, and actually you probably can't see that with the lighting being so direct, is that it's rather shiny. And this is the problem with the paint that's on here. Two problems: it's very, very thick, so where the boat flexes it tends to snap rather than being able to stretch like something that's thin, like the surface of a balloon. And also where it's been applied just to the boat in its shiny state, so it's not been keyed, so sanded, made rough, so the paint can stick into the surface. It's actually just sat on the surface, so in the majority of the boat it just comes off in great big flakes off where it's not stuck down at all, and where it's been stretched and cracked over the years. And you can see all of this, and even more so on the other side, is that paint just fell off as I was doing this edge. Then this just became very, very easy. But in other places it has stuck, and it's stuck into the cracks, and you can see there's this sort of scarring, a roughness in various places, and here where the paint has actually been stuck to the surface, it's actually taken quite an effort to scrape it off. But if we get it back to there, this is very, very easy to sand. It's very, very soft indeed. So I'm not too worried about, you know, that being part of the paint removal process. You can see here, you know, where I finished, that's pretty clean, and it just needs a quick sand off to be ready for painting. But I've got, so, the top of the front and the top of the middle of the roof to do, and then I'll be complete. But first off, I need to have a look at these bits that are sat on the deck, that are sat on that paint that I want to get off. So first of all, have a look at that. I got up a bit earlier today to try and catch a bit of light. I'm a night owl, and I, you know, spent I was working out here till 1 o'clock in the morning with my head torch the other day. But let's get these bits off, get this done, and it'll be Christmas. Right. I'll just introduce to you a tool that we use for undoing stuck in screws, and we use this from the very first instance. I don't know whether this is really sticky or not. I know it's probably made of brass, and it's a flathead screw, and they're all along this rail I want to take off. And I know that if I put a screwdriver on it, the soft brass metal, if this is stuck in as it's been here for many, many, many years, is because I can only push down so hard, is in fact what will happen is the soft brass will start to give way. It will push the screwdriver up a little, and it'll turn off the metal at the top of this screw, then I won't be able to undo it. So what we'll do instead is use this, which is an impact driver, which is a type of screwdriver that is like a screwdriver, but when you apply force to it, it rotates just a little bit. And what we do actually with this is hit the end of it, so as the pressure from the strike comes through, it is converted into both pushing down very hard and to turning the screw, and that should maybe hopefully just get it started. So we shall have a look at that now, get these off, get the paint off, get done. So actually, just before I strike it, I'm holding it in the top of the screw there, and we just turn it as if we're going to undo it, just to take up the slack in the mechanism so it's quite taut and ready to turn, and then I'll hit it. So you see there, I saw that turned through about 30 degrees, and we've still got the top of the screw, so we'll just keep on working it up by hitting it with medium force, not really smashing it, but not, you know, mucking about, giving it a whack. Well, in case anyone was wondering, no, I didn't get finished on Christmas Eve. I worked until 1:45 in the morning, and then went and enjoyed regular Christmas at the Bullingdon. My robin has just returned. She'll be singing in a minute. Right, just before we finish off, there's one part of the sanding job that we haven't talked about, and that is this. Now you can see this is the nearly finished bit. You know, I've gone to this ready to paint, or ready to do the final sand finish, but the bits I did before, we've still got some of the gel coat showing, so it's interesting to look at this now, because I was on the other side. It's not so bad, and we can go and have a look at that maybe. Is I did not want to sand off the existence of this feature, and this is the boot stripe, and the boot stripe is very important. This is the boot stripe. You'll see, you know, it is a physical, it's physically moulded into the hull, and the purpose of the boot stripe is, as the boat sits in the water, the boot stripe is at the water's surface. When she's unloaded, the water will be toward the bottom of the boot stripe, and when she's fully laden, the water will be at the top of the boot stripe. And one can look at the boot stripe and its relationship from side to side and fore and aft in the water to see whether the boat is overloaded, whether she's lopsided, whether she's badly, you know, whether she's stern down, or you know, whether she's balanced in the water before one sails. So it's a very important feature of the boat, and it's part of the boat. But if we're sanding, you know, and sanding it off, basically sanding it off, we need to know where this is to be able to put the paint back in the right place, so the boot stripe is in its design position, so that we can then assess. Let's have a look at the other side. And you see in some areas it's really very indistinct. You really can't kind of see that at all, and in others it's really quite clear. So one can sand all the paint off over the top of the boot stripe, and it still exists in the surface of the glass fibre there underneath the gel coat, so it's part of the mould, so we don't have to be too scared about rubbing it completely out of existence. But it's certainly something to bear in mind, is to not go too deep in that area, because we need to know where the boot stripe is. And that's really the only consideration I think with sanding, other than to say it's hard work, as I thought it would be, as I had said. So we can look at the paint here. There it is, and all of the sandpaper that we've used. So maybe 100 sheets or something of that order. This is the bucket that had where we scraped off the paint stripper. Up to about there. It's got powder from the sanders in it. This bucket is about a third full, just with dense powder. It's really quite heavy. And then on top of that, the scrapings from the deck. So that's the size of the job. And in terms of time, I record the hours with a little bit that I've got to do left, just on the transom there. It would have taken about 75 or 76 hours in 21 days of doing things, and that is in a period of 4 months. I've also designed 4 buildings in that time, which is very time consuming indeed. So working part-time for 4 months on 21 days that were nice, and I was, you know, I had some time. I spent 75 hours doing the sanding, and she is now naked. virtually. But it's hard work. And in the majority of the days, particularly at the beginning when I was beginning sanding and sanding underneath, the days that I was doing were maybe only 2 or 3 hours long because it was so hard physically. My right hand feels strained, but it's okay. My right shoulder, I think from scraping, that's really rather painful actually at the moment. It's getting slightly better. I've had a couple of days off over Christmas, and my left hand, so my index finger and all the way down through my hand, connecting my index finger, if I stretch that in a particular way, sitting down, putting my hand out, it's just, it suddenly is a great shooting, burning sensation. I think it's a tendonitis from using the vibrating machinery, the sanders. So it's, I say that they're getting better, but it's uncomfortable work and it's physically demanding work. And I have certainly had some, occupational injuries from doing it. But there you are. She is done. It's still a nice day, but as maybe we saw in the roof scraping part of the film, there's actually ice all over the deck as I was doing that scraping. So get finished with this paint. We're moving into January and February, and January and February can be very unfriendly months indeed. So I want as soon as possible to be undercover to a greater extent than I am here. I want to, put some distance between the covering and the boat, so I can get underneath the cover and work, and we can start looking at the repairs and the modifications that we're going to make, so we can then start fitting out as the weather improves after January and February. So that is it. That is paint. That is paint. I just want to coda PS. A couple of things. One thing. PS. The point with sanding back to this creamy colour is that although there's not much difference, I can feel it though with my finger between this smooth surface and the edge of the gel coat. The gel coat is smooth and the fiberglass is smooth, but unless we take off all this blue, there's still an edge, and this gel coat is a little bit shiny, and in an eventual finish you will see these shapes through any top coats that go on. That edge will just become more and more obvious. So it has to be removed completely, totally, all of it, I think. Thanks.